Hi, this is episode 49 of Crondos. I'm your host, Jordan Hudgens. I'm a Ruby dev and the CTO of the DevCamp platform. On Thursdays, I like to cover news from around the technology sector. And today, I'm going to discuss enterprises using open source software. Personally, I've had the ability to work for small startups and a few Fortune 500 companies. Therefore, I've been able to see how large and small organizations utilize software. Around 8 years ago, I started working for a large oil and gas organization, and I was able to see firsthand how software was used in enterprise environments. To put it lightly, back then enterprises despised the thought of open source software. This led to constant frustrations for myself and the developers I worked with. I remember one time where it took a month to get the jQuery JavaScript library approved for a project. However, the past few years have ushered in a completely new era for open source software adoption from enterprises. This diagram illustrates the changing perspective that enterprises have on open source software. Some of the largest organizations in the world have moved away from exclusively using enterprise solutions and have opted for open source alternatives. While nowhere near a comprehensive list, I want to discuss a few companies that are doing some amazing things with open source software while still being in an enterprise environment. The first one I'd like to mention is Bloomberg. As one of the largest financial data service providers in the world, Bloomberg sifts through petabytes of data on a daily basis. In an attempt to effectively work through various big data algorithms, Bloomberg utilizes the Hadoop system extensively. If you've never used it before, Hadoop is an open source NoSQL database. Kevin Fleming, who works in the CTO office at Bloomberg, had this to say about how they use open source software. We're not at the point where we have a formal open source program, but over the last 3 or 4 years, we've begun to strongly encourage developers to use open source tools to solve problems, especially if we can contribute back to those projects as well. Next on the list is surprisingly Microsoft. If you've ever worked in a large organization, you've probably experienced one of the Microsoft Stack type tools. These include things such as Active Directory for user management, SharePoint for file sharing and collaboration, Microsoft SQL for database management, and different things like that. Even though Microsoft has been an enterprise software leader for years, it is actually starting to embrace open source solutions. In fact, Microsoft has spent countless millions of dollars in building their own Azure cloud platform. This cloud-based system actually embraces open source software and works with tools such as Docker, and it makes it much more straightforward to launch applications and work with it. It has some similar kind of components to, say, Heroku or one of those type of app engines. Microsoft's enterprise software used to be the bane of my existence. However, over the past few years, they've made a concerted effort to work with open source systems. A recent TechCrunch article said that the list of Fortune 500 enterprises that use open source software is nearly endless. And the list isn't limited to technology firms. Companies such as Walmart, GE, Merck, and Goldman Sachs all embrace open source projects. If you would have told me even 10 years ago that enterprises would start embracing open source software, I wouldn't have believed you. However, the numbers don't lie. Gartner research says that 85% of enterprises now utilize open source solutions in some form or another. ZDNet published research saying that less than 3% of enterprises aren't using any kind of open source solutions. With all of the great benefits that open source offers, it's important to also consider the drawbacks. In the same ZDNet post, it revealed some sobering facts. 1, over 50% of enterprises don't understand the security requirements of using open source solutions. In light of security events, such as the OpenSSL hack, it is vital for enterprises to have systems in place to ensure their open source integrations are secure. Second, the majority of enterprises are not cataloging the OSS tools that companies are using. This type of disorganization can cause potential security vulnerabilities. However, just as importantly, it can translate into organizations performing parallel tasks and really wasting resources, as opposed to sharing them. I remember when I was working for a large enterprise, we constantly had this issue. We'd be working on a specific project, and months later we'd find out that another division in the company was implementing a nearly identical piece of software. In order to save resources, it's vital that organizations catalog each project and piece of software being utilized.